What's Superman about?
I gotta look at the script. And, he's from Uganda? And there's a love scene with Batman and Robin.
Wow. That took everything for me though to shout out fuck.
Geopolitics, identity politics, masculinity, nostalgia, the culture wars, wokeism, immigration, politics, Middle Eastern conflict, empathy, kindness.
It's mostly just a movie that's made up of stupid decisions.
No!
The whole point of Superman is that he's bringing these kind of classic American values to the big city.
No!
A more hopeful, buoyant Superman film.
It's certainly not commenting on things going on in the United States.
So what's it about?
I want the truth!
Hey, loser. You're a loser.
I think it's actually this brief moment that encapsulates what the 2025 Superman is really about. Let me explain. This is the story of three Supermen. It's a bit narcissistic, isn't it? No, not us as Superman. I mean the three eras of Superman, the three film adaptations of Superman. We were just trying to be a bit clever with the intro. Yeah, that totally don't work. Don't worry, I think it's cool. Well, what do you think it should be then? What's the new Superman really about? Yeah, that is better. I like them both. Both rubbish. We're in a new era, many claim, geopolitically, culturally, scientifically, artistically. A new world, new cultural concerns and attitudes, new trends. It seems like a time of genuine significant change. And to reflect this new era, we have a new Superman. I wasn't referring to the logo. A new Superman for our times. So what does Superman mean? Thankfully, everyone is in agreement about what it means.
There has been some criticism from the right that the movie was too, quote-unquote, woke.
Superman's actually a refugee.
Isn't that an immigrant?
They're trying to equate those things together, which I think is ridiculous because of the current politicization of that situation.
It's a movie about just like very positive, not even just positive.
It's hard to disagree with calling this a positive movie.
James Gunn is not the kind of guy who's going to put an American flag in his front yard during 4th of July. And that's the kind of guy you need to be to create Superman.
It was amazing. The film was way more hopeful than anything we've seen in the last decade. It's bright, sincere, and fun.
Gotta talk about the Superman movie, or should I say super woke. James Gunn's remake has a lot of issues with it. The emasculated Superman has a subtle anti-American message to it.
Superman rocked.
Let's have Superman be woke. I don't know, y'all, but it's getting absolutely savaged.
Before they've even seen it, conservative pundits on YouTube are already calling it woke garbage.
You know, the idea they start talking politics and Superman is an immigrant. Superman's actually a refugee and was adopted and assimilated into American culture tremendously well. And so that's a little bit different than
Isn't that an immigrant?
No.
No?
It's a refugee.
Both immigrants and kindness are canceled in Donald Trump's America, so the right was super outraged.
It's basically a cinematic condom. Contraception created to shield us from the obnoxious identity politics that's plagued Hollywood blockbusters for a decade.
Oozes optimism out of like every kind of organist,
But you've heard on the internet, Superman is not a political movie. It's actually incredibly frustrating that this narrative has spread so quickly across the internet because it's coming from people that have not seen the movie.
Yes, it's about politics, says James Gunn.
There's this whole narrative about how it's a movie all about immigration and commenting on immigration.
Hang on a minute, you're trying to tell me that the illegal alien who literally grew up as an undocumented farm worker and now lives in fear of the government tracking him down despite the fact that he lives a productive and helpful life as a member of his community is an allegory for immigration? That sounds woke and gay.
Well, I mean, Superman is an alien that is an immigrant here.
Superman is about an outsider becoming one of us and showing more humanity than the people who are supposed to belong there? Yeah, right.
Everybody on Variety and all these other articles that were out there were pulled from this interview from the Times of London.
James Gunn's Superman is the worst fucking movie that's ever been made.
Terminally online man babies can interpret a stupid comic book movie in so many different ways that your head will spin.
And this is a new one that is a slightly lighter tone, filled with more hope.
Director James Gunn said that Superman is an immigrant.
Also a quote from James Gunn, on another level, it's about morality.
Hey, isn't it great that summer blockbuster movies are now just political Rorschach tests? I want to die.
I was not aware of any of this.
I did not like this movie at all. Every man in this movie is weak and he cries.
This movie, like most art, is political. It doesn't get more political than geopolitics. But because you're a 17 IQ culture warrior, you think politics is when a woman is in a leadership role or a drag queen is cast in a show that stars a black superhero.
New Superman film is going to be political. It is political, and compared the superhero's experience to the immigrant experience in America. How is this being received, this woke Superman?
The right loves to hate on pop culture, mostly to get attention. But their attacks on the new Superman are nastier than usual.
It was corny, it was goofy, it was campy, and it was one big old piece of trash.
I mean, there was also stuff about Lex Luthor and saving the world, but as far as I was concerned, it was a movie about a man and his dog.
Hollywood's has been trying to remove masculinity for it seems like the last decade. Once again, it needs to be white boy summer to bring people back to the box office.
It is raking in obscene amounts of money.
That show got Supergirl. That's obviously going to be a huge money-losing flop.
That was one of the dumbest, stupid superhero movies I've ever seen.
Refugees are immigrants, though, aren't they, really?
Well, yeah, but you got to understand, Pierce, the United States is the most immigrant-friendly country on the planet by far. We take more than the next 4 countries legal immigrants every year, more than the next 4 countries combined every single year.
Right. So why would you mind if a narrative is that Superman's an immigrant? Why wouldn't that be a thing?
No, I don't
to
mind
celebrate?
that narrative, but the truth is he is a refugee.
And damn, man, what a delightfully optimistic, frustratingly flawed, and thoroughly weird movie this turned out to be.
Oh my God, here we are with identity politics. Oh, friends, go woke and go broke.
It's woke, apparently. Apparently even more so than Snow White.
It's exactly what the movie is about, I think. That, like, we support our people, you know? We love our immigrants. Yes, Superman is an immigrant. And yes,
this is his brother. Is this not his brother, Sean?
That we support in this country are immigrants. And if you don't like that, then you're not American. People who...
So that was his brother, but he also said, quote, he did an interview with the Times of London. He said that Superman is the story of America, an immigrant that came from other places and populated the country. And it says, it's a story that for me says basic human kindness is a value and something that we have lost. This Independence Day, All Family Pharmacy is putting freedom back in your hands.
Superman is back and he's woke as ever. He's woke as ever. I love it. Yes, despite what Ben Shapiro and Michael Knowles are saying, this movie has a lot of progressive values in it, and I think that honestly, it serves as a great form of representation for men.
And so I'm not going to criticize European settler colonialism any more than I would criticize Arab settler colonialism throughout the Middle East, because this is the way humanity operates. That is the way humanity operates. The European settler colonialist movement is in fact morally better than the Muslim settler colonialist movement that came out of the Middle East in the 7th century and 8th century. The attempt to separate Superman off from America is just a demonstration by the cultural left of how much they dislike America. And that's no shock, because when you take that over into the political sphere, full scale, what you end up is a different kind of immigrant. Like the guy who may be the next mayor of New York, Zoran Mamdani.
There have been a Superman comics critiquing the idea that he's sort of like tied to America for over half a century. I mean, at least going back to the 60s that I'm aware of, probably well before that. The idea of like fighting corruption internationally, the idea that he shouldn't be beholden to the bad decision-making of presidents. One of the most famous comic stories ever, The Dark Knight Returns. In it, Superman is essentially a puppet of Reagan. You know that meme? When you watching Spider-Man as a kid? Remember, respect all minorities. Oh, Spider-Man. You watching Spider-Man as an adult? Remember, respect all minorities. Oh, they made it woke.
Take control, make America healthy again.
He's like, I don't see red tape. I don't see the politics here. I just want to stop people from dying, and a war was going to break out between totally not Israel and totally not Palestine.
Son prochain film, Superman, sera un film.
Was he a bit weak? And how was that a good thing?
Hi, Zack Snyder.
Just saw your new cut of Superman, and word of advice, he's the man of steel, not the man of conversation.
The most brilliant thing that Gunn did was Baravia, is Israel, obviously. They're cartoonishly evil in the film, right? So no one who supports Israel can look at it and go, well, Baravia is supposed to be Israel, because they then would have to admit that what they are doing in real life is cartoonishly evil.
Culturally, I think the world is in a place where there's obviously a lot of turmoil, a lot of people confused about what's going on in both the world and the media.
It's such a brilliant, like, oh, Baravia made you think of Israel? What about it? What about what they were doing? No, tell. The supervillain stuff? Is that what reminded you of them? Interesting. It's just comic book stuff, man.
And I think that somebody as hopeful as Superman is something people are thirsty for.
In the text of the film, they literally say Superman is an alien.
Hey, what are you watching?
Lex Luthor is non-binary now. It's not explicitly stated, but I can just tell.
Oh, it's a political commentator's review of the new Superman movie. Hollywood beams woke particles off the projector and onto the screen that bounce into my eyeballs. I might become woke. Want to see Superman?
Yeah.
Then go watch it. It's just a movie. Fine. But if looking at Superman's gorgeous face makes me gay, I mean woke, I'm blaming you. That's fine.
So much pop culture is ironic or mean or whatever, and Superman is not that. He's earnest, and that's okay. That's what makes him go against the grain of everything else in the world today.
If you like the movie, you're wrong. If you dislike the movie, you're wrong.
Had a chance to see Superman, and I'm a little conflicted on it.
Already, there's extensive commentary proposing what Superman is about. So how are we to navigate this? Is there a right and wrong interpretation? If so, who's right? If not, what's going on with all the massively different hot takes? So what's it about? Good fighting evil. Can you be more specific?
Sure. Being the beacon of goodness, being the most all-powerful superhero, a moral guardian, superpowers, stopping bad guys, doing the right thing, red and blue costume and a cape, flying, laser eyes, ice breath, shooting mini clones from his frickin' fingers.
Yeah.
Truth, justice, and the American way.
Easy. Next. Okay, those are all Superman's essential characteristics, but what does this Superman mean? If you're going to say this, you need to be on a Superman clip. You're not Superman. Well, philosophically, we're all Superman. You're definitely not. All right, piss off. Fucking hell.
What's that?
Nothing. Sorry. Yep. I propose that this Superman is a prime example of meta-modernism, and that this is its overarching meta-meaning. But that all sounds a bit, well, meta. To grasp this idea properly, it will help to lay out the differences of the previous Supermans. This essay charts the evolution of Superman adaptations from modern to meta-modern. So, Superman. What's it really about? Let's get into it. Up and away. Superman indeed has changed based on the time period he was written in, and in a way that represented the evolving beliefs of American society.
Examining these films will tell us a lot about the filmmakers, but more importantly, a lot about ourselves.
If Superman reflects us, both in the lore of the story, but also as a cultural icon in our real world, as a piece of representative, reflective fiction, art imitating life, then what do we see? What are we in today's world? What is Superman reflecting? What kind of society and humanity are we projecting onto the Superman of our era? As seems to be the case with cultural tentpole films like Superman, these iconic superhero roles as the kind of pop culture Macbeth of our age. Yes, I went there. Along with Batman, Bond, and a few others, it reflects our society and how we view it. It's an artist's duty to reflect the times in which we live. I don't think that you can help it. You are of the time, no matter what your art is. You are a representative of the time period you create. These culturally potent iconic stories and characterizations are snapshots of our current ethos within the surrounding epoch. This is the strength of remakes, or more precisely, of folklore and myth, which franchises are the commercial modern day equivalent of. Just consider how similar modern superhero movies are to Greek mythology or biblical spectacle. Midas in Wonder Woman, floods and apocalyptic imagery with Thanos, Superman as Christ, etc. These characters and their story worlds, diegeses, are vessels for differing interpretations of artists of the age, which amplify trends and cultural concerns of that age. The characters are like null objects, mathematical sets, tensors or node groups, allowing for philosophical, cultural, political and moral discourse within the subtext, because stories are, in the final analysis, a kind of technology for delivering morality, or exploring morality. They are containers that can be filled with new subtextual as well as new textual elements that resonate with a contemporary audience. A bit like the suits they wear, these characters and stories are narrative and cultural suits themselves that the artists of the time adorn. Every writer, especially novelist, has a message, whether he admits it or not, and the minutest details of his works are influenced by it. All art is propaganda. But we're also seeing a new body within it, underneath it, driving it, wearing it, moving it. A bit like the Joker being referred to as the taxi driver of our age, in as much as really it's a film about inequality and social struggle and revolt and distrust and the breaking down of systems, of capitalism, of contemporary society in general.
Is it just me? Or is it getting crazier out there?
The world's changing, Clark. And the questions are getting louder.
But it has to be delivered within the cloak of a familiar superhero character. And so these event movies reflect and crystallise the era's collective consciousness in a powerfully succinct way that often serves to help define these paradigmatic shifts, in some cases helping the transformation. It's a dialectically fluid, constantly changing phenomenon that we are able to talk about in relatively fixed ways because of how these vast changes take so much time. So it appears kind of fixed, but it's not really. It's a bit like a cloud. You look up and it seems fixed, but watch for a while and you'll see it slowly starting to move and undulate and change. Vaguely, perhaps, barely perceptibly, but nonetheless constantly shifting. So what's the difference with this Superman? In particular, I think Superman crystallizes the current pervasive trend of meta-modernism.
Hey, loser. You're a loser.
For this Superman to be meta-modern kind of depends on previous Supermans not being. And so this essay charts the categorization of the 3 eons of Superman. Modernist conditions are all reactionary states dependent upon one another, reacting to the previous ones. But first, we should define our terms. What is modernism? Modernity is neither a sociological concept, nor a political concept, nor exactly a historical concept. It is a characteristic mode of civilization which opposes itself to tradition. It imposes itself throughout the world as a homogeneous unity irradiating from the Occident. Nevertheless, it remains a confused notion which connotes in a global manner any historical evolution and change of mentality. Yeah, thanks Baudrillard. Although he's one of the key significant theorisers of modernism, he's not always the easiest to understand. So, modernism. Modernism is basically a break from traditions and the pursuit of new ones. But it's unsurprisingly a lot more complicated than that. Modernism was a global movement in society and culture in the early 20th century where a new alignment with the experience and values of emerging new ways of life was explored. These new ways were mainly industrialization, urbanization, secularization, nationalization, technological innovation, and individualism. Up until this period, technological progress was slower, but in the 19th century, huge changes in technological development emerged, and with them, all sorts of questions of morality and ethics and changes in thought and behaviour. Some argue that it has been developing since the end of the medieval or Middle Age period, as basically an era where things started to change into more the world we are familiar with today. particularly by the Enlightenment era of the 17th century, where reason and science had supplanted religion, particularly in the West. Modernism can be argued to emerge more wholesale. In a new godless world where old traditions had been debunked, now viewed as passé, what was society going to be? Modernism then argues for self-actualization, individuality, and a re-evaluation of all values. Starting to sound a little bit American Dream? So long as it ends with strong, enlightened, perfected incarnations of super-European men, supermen, leading the dumber masses with the objectively right moral values, whilst the New Age man, or the overman, will conquer nature and bend the world to his will. Okay, so probably helpful to have a summary list of the attributes of modernism, which are skepticism towards and a break from the old traditions, a break from religion, individualism, smaller family and privacy, rejection of community, human rights from the individualism and skepticism towards nobility, urbanization and alienation, a move towards reason, science and technology, the emergence of modern nation states, industrialization, structuralism. Everything can be structured, categorized, discovered and fixed with science and empiricism, and understood with reason. In our secular world of technology, individualism, meaninglessness, no purpose, what shall we do? Who should we follow? Yes, science is helping build technology, but what about the meaning side of our lives? With no God or community, who will guide us in the path of morality and show us the right way? Enter the OG incarnation of Superman, the Übermensch. Considered one of the most significant modernist thinkers, 19th century philosopher Friedrich Wilhelm Nietzsche writes, "All beings so far have created something beyond themselves. And do you want to be the ebb of this great flood and even go back to the beasts rather than overcome man? What is the ape to a man? A laughingstock or a painful embarrassment, and man shall be just that for the overman." Overman, or Übermensch in German, was coined by philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche in 1883 in his novel Thus Spoke Zarathustra, where Zarathustra describes the goal of humanity as being the Übermensch, a kind of self-actualized ideal man. Just look at those pistons. Don't miss leg day. But what's with the tiny foot that comes after the severance from God, and so divine morals, goals handed down from on high, to now create morality himself, be his own God, becoming a superior human in the process and going beyond man, overman. Man now had to face life and create his own meaning and goals and morality. The term, translated into English as Overman or Beyond Man and Superman, which was popularised via various means such as George Bernard Shaw's play Man and Superman, a 4-act play written in 1903, partly inspired by Nietzsche's work according to Shaw, as it explores notions that mankind is evolving through natural selection via women towards a Superman, a super version, a perfect version. As alluded to by a new theory of humanity called evolution, the notion was that there's a kind of evolution of humanity, of man, towards a kind of perfect version, or a Superman. It was also as a kind of adaptation or continuation of the Don Juan Spanish-Italian folktale, and its commission brief requested an English version of this. And so Shaw wrote the play as a response to and reversal of Tirso de Molina's play El Burlado de Sevilla y Convidado de Piedra, The Trickster of Seville and the Stone Guest, thought to be the earliest rendering or source of the Don Giovanni or Don Juan myth. The Spanish play from 1630 depicts the legendary Don Juan, who seduces women with almost superhuman aplomb or ease. He's presented very much as a kind of superhero of that age, being of heroic ability, stature, morality, etc. Bueno, the perfect man must combine the armor with the breeches and the ruff, and the tights and the sandals. I know not why I know it you. Wise beast, it is because I obviously cut such an intimidating and formidable figure. Yes, the flowery arm ribbon is frightening. Oh there, who has the stick? Do you have the stick? No, I have the stick, so shut up. According to Shaw, here in his play, Anne, representing Doña Ana, is the predator. Don Juan is the quarry instead of the huntsman. He's the object of desire, with Doña Ana in Shaw's version being the actual prime mover, the controller of this evolution of man, via her selection, via women's selection in general. And so Shaw is exploring the notion here that natural selection is kind of guided by women on the whole, as the main selectors of male mates to create offspring. Shaw explores Nietzschean modernist ideas and emerging ideologies in the play by inverting the existing Don Juan theme and focusing on elements and framing the story through the lenses of his era, namely early notions of modernism, secularism, individualism, and eugenics, and of a teleological perfect end state of humanity. This last idea is an emerging ideology developed and articulated by German philosopher Georg Hegel, later adopted by many writers since across the ideological spectrum: Marx, Hitler, Rand, Fukuyama, Zizek, etc. Hegel claims that history is a rational process driven by the world spirit, or Geist in German. Universal history is the exhibition of Geist. Just as the seed bears in itself the whole nature of the tree, including the taste and form of its fruit, so do the first traces of Geist virtually contain the whole of its own history. History, far from being an undifferentiated aggregate of incomprehensible accidents and chance events, has a rational structure. The march of reason through history is a complex dialectical process, in which both individuals and nations are mere tools, unaware of the import and significance of their own deeds. Changes might be introduced by world historical individuals such as Alexander, Caesar, and Napoleon, but they are thus unconscious tools in the hand of the Geist. History is thus the development towards the consciousness of freedom as expressed in the political, cultural, and religious institutions of a nation. Volksgeist. This is expressed externally through the formation of objective institutions, in particular the state. So history chooses human agents, like human-shaped holes made by the Geist, or world spirit, or ideas and trends and public will of the time, gradually unfolding and becoming more self-conscious, ultimately culminating in the realization of freedom. In other words, world history is not just a random sequence of happenings, but progresses rationally according to a specific purpose, a historical teleology, similar to what Marx later developed into dialectical materialism. This process is characterized by conflicts between opposing forces, a class war. Each stage of this building history represents a step in the development of this self-actualization, again clearly influencing Nietzsche and subsequent thinkers. This is a kind of secular spirituality here that many philosophers flirt with. Also important to note that Hegel thinks this progression towards an ultimate goal is via reason, but also brought about by world historical figures like Napoleon or Socrates, who are really embodiments of whole cultural sentiments, proxies unconsciously enacting the will of the driving world spirit Geist around them. Like current Western leaders being driven by public anger at a failing economic system, all giving different solutions, far right blaming soft socialism, immigration and welfare, far left blaming billionaires and wealth inequality and exploitative capitalism. Hegel particularly had a thing for Napoleon, who he thought was just the shit. He saw him riding on horseback once and just creamed himself over this image of the perfect embodiment of the world spirit in one beautifully powerful masculine body. Shaw's Don Juan has an entire act where he discusses philosophy and morality with various characters in hell, often cut, but demonstrates the lofty ideas being wrestled with here. From Molina's Don Juan to Hegel's Geist-driven Napoleon to Nietzsche's godlike Übermensch to Shaw's Man and Superman, to the amazing stories short story The Superman by Johnson in the August 1931 issue, which is all about breeding of this perfect, almost superhuman-like man, Lothair, a perfectly, almost supernaturally bred aristocrat who has all of these amazing characteristics and abilities far beyond your average man. He easily physically bests a slave twice his size, who he purchases specifically for combat. So this story is already exploring these notions of eugenics that are cropping up around the time. The slave, Andreas, then vows to bring down this Superman master, as well as the institutions that created the slavery, the scientific kingdom led by Mendelssohn, an obvious allusion to Mendel, considered to be one of the significant discoverers of genetics, who enslaves people for minor misdemeanors and works on creating this kind of perfected superhuman elite class. It seems important to note here that the Superman, the superhuman character, is the antagonist. The Superman is the baddie in this story, similar to Paul Atreides in Dune. As well as being the leader of a rebellion, of a revolution, of an emancipation, the story also explores Paul Atreides, the protagonist, as the rise of a dictator, of an immoral character, of an anti-hero, that later adaptations, such as Star Wars in the case of Dune, seem to forget. Or perhaps simply purposefully changed, or even misunderstood, and reframed that character as the hero, leaving aside all the complex ethical discussions that the character is meant to engender. But also as an offshoot of that ideology and idea and development and movement is the idea of an advanced set of capabilities that the modern incarnation of Superman has in the eventual emergence of Siegel and Schuster's Superman. Notice the kind of paradigmatic, fully evolved, perfectly actualized race language of eugenics being deployed here. It was definitely an idea that was of the time, as well as it being an allegory for the Jewish diaspora experience, echoing the biblical story of Moses, the baby who is sent away from a tyrannical, oppressive society and is taken in by a different society and has to grow up as an immigrant from a different place. Specifically found by the Pharaoh's daughter as in the family of that oppressive society and then raised as nobility within that oppressive society, but that's getting into the specific weeds there. And let's not forget, it's all myth anyway. This isn't verified history. But the child sent away, Superman or Moses, from the oppressive society and then found by the actual oppressors of that society does neatly scan onto an interesting metaphor which suggests that the USA are the oppressors of the world, that then take in Superman and raise him as their own, indoctrinating him with their ideologies. The presence of these conflicting themes being a tragic irony, given the eugenics-led genocidal holocaust that befell the Jewish people in the 20th century.
Superman's origin is pretty well known. Born on Krypton, sent off into space before the planet explodes, lands on Earth where he gets adopted by the Kents. They name him Clark, raise him to be a good guy, to use his powers for good.
Indeed, Jewish culture and the Jewish people at the time were considered to be antithetical to that rising authoritarian nationalism with its absolutist view of race, nation, and culture, because of the Jewish people's recent nomadic history at that time. Qua, wandering or eternal, the Jews were seen as embodying the spirit of restlessness and lack of roots, undermining traditional and fixed national and racial identities. So the inspiration tendrils reach far back before its first bona fide publication, as every piece of art does. And with all this cultural inheritance, Jerome Siegel and Joe Shuster moulded all this zeitgeist together into the character of Superman in 1933, and developed and submitted the idea for several years until Action Comics finally took it on and launched with Superman on its front cover and featured as its main story. Superman's first incarnation as we recognise him was in 1938. Superman was initially conceived as a kind of social activist or a social justice warrior with superpowers, protector of the oppressed, and so actually super woke to begin with, by the framing of today's right-wing commentators at least.
Let's have Superman be woke. It's getting absolutely savage.
Who have obviously never read the original comic. In the year of Superman's creation, the Great Depression was in full swing. Millions were left poor and disadvantaged from their unemployment and blows to their businesses. Many were losing faith in the government as time and time again attempts to remedy this economic disaster failed. In 1936, Franklin D. Roosevelt's second presidential campaign centered on taxing and regulating the wealthy and big business, who had been profiting from the little protections their workers had at the time before the New Deal. This anti-big business theme and support for the little man became popular for the time as unions and the disadvantaged rallied behind the idea. Superman embodied these sentiments as what Jeffrey K. Johnson calls the New Deal Avenger in his creation years by taking multiple stands against corrupt businesses and wrongdoing hoodlums. In the first issue of The Caped Crusader, Superman sleuths around investigating a wealthy lobbyist and so conveys the immorality of the plutocratic sway the wealthy have on ostensible democracy in the USA. So it's political from the start too. But also worth noting that Superman has many right-wing traits as well as left from the start. Okay, Clark, we want you to go and cover the war in the South American Republic San Monte. Yes, perfect. Now Superman can go and help stop the war under the cover of Clark. Brilliant. Superman? What are you doing? Forget the war. I'm going to rough up this globalist sympathizing lobbyist instead. He's threatening the separatist ideology of the USA, for heaven's sake. Truth, justice, and the American way. Do any of those notions perhaps contradict each other? How about I laser eye your face off, Limey? So, although he is a champion of the oppressed and marginalised and DEI from the start, he is also nationalistic and quite tyrannically pro-law and order, acting as a kind of secret police for the USA government, as if ICE weren't just focusing on immigration, but rather wider corruption. So although the first Superman comics were arguably politically dissonant, they were still in the vein of modernity. So let's apply our modernism framework to the first Superman adaptations. Our first feature film adaptation of Superman for the silver screen, the Donner and Revue Superman of 1978. The film and the depiction of Superman embodies the modernist ideals inasmuch as it is the Übermensch, the perfect vision of a powerful, noble man who is the best of us, godlike, but also human-like, here to battle evil in traditional ways. Human-like, but also beyond human, an overman, a Superman. But amid a world of technology and human frailty, of the modernist condition, of new ages, of national values, the American way, Superman is an embodiment of the will to power, of a new age, of Western American values which are rooted in individualism, the American dream, the notion that anyone can become whatever they want, the best version of themselves, the Übermensch, the overman, and amid a technological growth, where technology and science seems to yield things far beyond our original and old capabilities, which seem almost divine in their magic, but also finding new purpose amongst all this, doing good as per a higher calling, not quite religious, but a new kind of higher, better being and morality. One that is perhaps created by man, but the best version of us. And this is what Nietzsche described and pined for. The boy in blue also being an emblem of superhuman capability who is able to fight a binary good battle and keep the virtuous West safe. Of course, there are elements that don't match here, such as modernism being an older episteme, Superman actually resembling a god who is meant to be dead according to Nietzsche, but these epochs often overlap, and it's common for awareness of the era to be delayed and difficult to define, and often defined later on after the epoch itself. The following epoch of post-modernity takes a while to flourish and emerge. These things, these trends, these phenomena don't have definite delineations. They are amorphous, as ideas are. And so, Donner and Reeves' Superman was an adaptation of an idea from decades earlier, which represented modernism, but which at the time of the film was arguably starting to fracture and evolve into something else in the wider culture. Criticisms of modernism emerged, not least because only a few years after the conception of Superman in 1938, the world saw the rise of fascism and brutal nationalistic horrors which many scholars track from modernist thought. In many ways, modernism arguably ended amid the horrific extreme conclusions of imperialism, nationalism, socialism, and capitalism in the 20th century. And what emerged from this ideology? According to many scholars, this then leads to the rise of dictatorships, eugenics, and the Holocaust. Discrimination based on science has a long history. In the 19th century, scientists, mainly from the USA, became interested in craniometry, the determination of intelligence through skull measurements. Between 1830 and 1850, Samuel George Morton collected over 1,000 skulls to determine an objective racial ranking according to physical characteristics such as brain size. Using these data, Morton declared that individual races ranked according to his preconceptions, whites first, then Native Americans, and black people last. Later, Stephen Jay Gould reinvestigated the data and found Morton's summaries to be a patchwork of fudging and finagling in the clear interest of controlling a priori convictions. It was Galton who first coined the word eugenics as the study of agencies under social control that may improve or impair the racial qualities of future generations. He wrote, "If a 20th part of the cost and pains were spent in measurements for the improvement of the human race that is spent on the improvement of the breed of horses and cattle, what galaxy of genius might we not create?" The eugenics movement predicted the degeneration of modern civilization and proffered scientific arguments and scientific means to counteract this. The theory of eugenics quickly spread worldwide, but the degree to which it was implemented varied from country to country. Even under social democratic governments, atrocities took place. In Germany, eugenics gained many supporters long before Hitler came to power, and was not solely a monstrosity of Hitler as so often portrayed. German scientists contributed considerably to the rise of eugenics. And so this is all to say that eugenics and the ills of the 20th century were not random acts of evil from one or two rotten apple people. It was also, likely more significantly, due to an emerging spirit of the time, an ideology of modernism and its arguably unethical consequences. Positive aspects notwithstanding. And if you think this is all well and good, but we're all past that, Black Lives Matter. Musk's grok calls itself Hitler. Musk does a Nazi salute at the victory rally of the right-wing Republican Party and the return of Donald Trump. Sydney Sweeney has good genes, according to American Eagle. Blonde hair, blue eyes.
This Sydney Sweeney ad is really imbued with eugenic messaging.
Genes are passed down from parents to offspring, often determining traits like hair color, personality, and even eye color. My genes are blue.
Sydney Sweeney has great genes.
It's saying that Sydney Sweeney has a great body and therefore great genes and therefore is a product of genetic superiority.
And American Eagle is accused by some of peddling Nazi propaganda.
But liberals saw a white woman with blonde hair and blue eyes and thought she was ushering in the Fourth Reich.
Instead of trying to preach to people, just selling ads with a clever line. I think all these people are giving the advertising industry far too much credit. We just love a pun.
American Eagle's chief marketing officer did say that this campaign would include clever, even provocative language.
It's nothing to do with... She has probably got good genes because she's, a very good-looking human being. But that's it. It's nothing to do with genetic superiority. That is absurd. When American Eagle is founded by two Jewish brothers, Jerry and Mark Silverman.
Well, yeah, I don't think it's absurd at all. I think you have to take into account the cultural climate right now. We can see the growing far right in America and their ties to white nationalism, and the fact that somebody like Trump himself is endorsing the ad, and we've seen how he wants to roll back DEI. We can see how them pushing this idea of genetic superiority is not absurd at all. It kind of aligns with everything that's going on in America right now. They know what kind of message they're trying to send, but they also know that the outrage from the left is going to push their marketing, but they don't really care about the harm that it does.
You see what I did there, right?
The previous Superman actor signs up for ICE, the USA's immigration enforcement police, to help deport illegal immigrants. Yep, the irony is clearly lost on him. Reform, far-right party surges in the UK in response to the swarm of immigration. Previous government had a policy of sending them away to Rwanda, itself recovering from a genocide in 1994 and ongoing conflicts with Congo. Israel, the ethno-state of superior chosen humans.
You were the chosen one!
Announces the dislocation via genocide of lesser, less moral and undeserving humans, the Palestinians, to take their land, depicted in the new Superman as Bavaria and Jarhanpur.
How is the U.S. going to own Gaza? Your White House has made clear taxpayer dollars won't be used for this. So what money are you going to use to buy Gaza?
Well, we're not going to buy anything. We're going to have it, and we're going to keep it, and we're going to make sure that there's going to be peace. And there's not going to be any problem, and nobody's going to question it.
Will Israel take control of all of Gaza?
We intend to, in order to assure our security, remove Hamas there.
We're going to have Gaza. We don't have to buy. There's nothing to buy. We will have Gaza.
What does that mean?
No reason to buy. There is nothing to buy. It's Gaza. It's a war-torn area. We're going to take it.
Mr. President, take it under what authority? It is sovereign territory.
Under the U.S. authority.
Of course, there are huge issues with Nietzschean philosophy, as the following century of humanitarian atrocities, much influenced by his will to power and human hierarchy, demonstrates. as Hitler was most likely influenced by Nietzsche's hierarchical view of humanity and used his writings and theories to inform his own racism and segregation of different types of people into the paradigm, the perfect Aryan race, and other less perfect ones, subhuman people, who could be killed morally. As well as ascending to the strongman dictatorial power influenced by Nietzschean thought, but also on the back of general modernist moves towards the importance of the individual and a break from God. Everyone starts having a crack at writing new Bibles, new texts of morality, how to live, and the right way of things. In this era, they are called political manifestos, theory publications, and scientific papers, great structural proclamations of the way things are and how they ought to be. But all was not well in this secular paradise, and despite thinkers of every age thinking that this age is the final one, things continue to change. According to Nietzsche, a significant figure in modernist thought, the modern post-religious world developments heralded many problems, which he defined as nihilism. He proclaimed that we killed God.
All gods will die.
Went secular, and because of it, society is now depraved, doomed to fail, immoral, and so on. God is dead. God remains dead, and we have killed him. Must we ourselves not become gods simply to appear worthy of it? He was struggling with the searching for meaning in an age of godlessness. No God, no meaning, no morality. Anyone and everyone can be evil without consequence. In an age where humans can make technology better than gods, then perhaps we ourselves are become gods. But only a select few. Crucially, he was critical of the collectivist, communal, egalitarian ideologies that had emerged from the French Revolution and that were the prevailing morality of that time, of universal human rights, and instead was theorizing that we all had a drive to greatness which only a few can attain, to become the Übermensch, or overman, via a will to power, which ultimately praised individualism and class. And so it can be argued he was in favour of hierarchy and the emergence of a ruling elite who were more actualized and better than lower humans. Nietzsche diagnoses the condition of this era as arising from a break from all traditions, mainly religion and divine nobility, but also democracy. We need to become better than human, the perfect human. I call it the Übermensch. Pretty cool, yeah? It means the overman. That's cute. Maybe Superman's a bit more catchy? This is not cute, woman. Remember, this is a perfect human who is above all other humans. Not a weakly woman, but a strong, perfect man. But all humans are still of equal value though, right? Right? And so all these notions, ideals and concepts are baked into the original incarnation of Superman from the 1930s comics, which the Donner film adaptation and first movie depiction of the boy in blue strives to be faithful towards. That's to say, the Donner-Reeves Superman adaptation depicts a modernist Superman, with all the ideas inherent within the condition. And after all these certainties, structural programs, and objective truths turn out to be false, limited, problematic, and more complex and morally lacking, as Nietzsche predicted, the zeitgeist shifts away from the modernism as a desired ideology and starts to grapple with the fallout of it, criticising it and then rejecting it once more, as itself rejected the previous traditions. All this then leads into modernism evolving into something new. Postmodernism.
Get the picture?
Which will be explored in the next part of this essay.
Hey, loser. You're a loser.
Where I'll explain how and why this scene crystallises the current Superman's themes and cultural meaning. I couldn't quite get to it in this part. Sorry, not sorry. In part 2, we'll explore the postmodern era, with Snyder's adaptation seeing Henry Cavill don the red cape, and explore how this cultural shift is crucial in understanding the third age of gun Superman that we have today. Thanks so much for your attention and watching this far. I hope you've enjoyed it and got something from it. More video essays like this to come, and there are links below in the usual places to find out how you can support me, interact, and find out more. Lastly, it would be great if you could like and subscribe so that I can scare my parents and tell them I'm becoming a YouTuber. Adios.